if you have a business that you want to be there for a very long time, you actually know what makes you money today is not going to make you money in 10 years. So when you promote people, you really need to make sure that that's the kind of job that people want, and that it's not just for reputation or more money.
Do you think that this generation has it harder than we did?
I don't think so. I would call it more different than harder or easier. For us, it was harder to get to information. A lot of things, they have it easier today, that's true. That is a challenge in itself. Life is hard. It's very often the hard things that you do in life where you learn a lot. It gives you a good grounding that help you being happy as a person. There was not much I could do with my dad at that age, but I wanted to see the world, and I took my mother and my stepdad along on a lot of those travels, or they came and visited me, and that was really sort of because of that movie.
Finally got you in the hot seat, isn't it?
Finally.
Finally. Well, I've had a couple of attempts. You want it to be guest 100?
Not quite, but yeah, it's great to finally make it. Hey.
Well, you can definitely come back for episode 100 and take that crown as well.
I definitely will.
Let's start.
If I haven't retired by that time, but
I'm sure you wouldn't have had retired by that point.
No, not quite.
I think you still have quite a long way to go. Especially nowadays with AI, it seems like you're really into it with Bjorn. So maybe just a quick intro of who you are first and what does Resolution do?
Okay. Well, I'm Christian Reichert. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Resolution. We started off as a sort of network consultancy doing Cisco routing, switching, those kind of professional services. So as a services company, but then over the years we have done many things and ended up being a very successful marketplace vendor on the Atlassian ecosystem now. So developing apps for Atlassian Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, etc., and having a good lifestyle doing that.
And who are you? Who's Christian? Like, what's your background?
Well, my background, it's always been IT, essentially. I think when I was, what would that translate to, 8th grade or so, I started to have a job on the side working for a software company. And I think I was 11. Yeah, no, not probably 9 when I wanted a computer and my dad bought me a Atari 800 XL. So, I mean, there was the Commodore gang, C64. I was in the Atari gang. But
when was this was in the 80s?
Yeah, must have been, 86, 87 or so. So 64K of RAM, that kind of that thing. But he bought me one, and I just would spend hours and hours and hours doing that. At that time, you still had the big floppy disks, but a lot of the even the games you could play, you very often wouldn't buy on floppy disks. You would actually get them in printed out magazines, and you would type up the code
I remember
from that, and then run the games. Yeah, so I've been in IT my whole life because I wanted to be. Yeah, it was just fascinating. It has always driven me. And besides being a dad now and other things, it's always been one of my greatest passions and still is.
I remember those days when you'd have games on floppy disks and you have like 10 floppy disks for one game and you have to load them, put floppy disk after floppy, and then code for 10 minutes in order to play a game. Good old days. 86, 87. I was born in 87.
Yeah, you see, you're a baby.
My first computer was actually my first computer was my dad buying his first computer, and it was back in the days of when you have like Pentium, and it was we would play Age of Empires 1 on it, and that's so it was a generation.
I was working on computers for a long time when
at that
Pentium
point
came out. Yeah, I've got started with Atari 800 XL, and then Atari ST. Got a lot of time on Commodores as well, because just a lot of my friends had them. So whenever I was over there, we would play on them or develop stuff on them. And only then, I think my first PC was a 286.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like 3 generations before the Pentium even came out.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look now where technology is, and it's crazy. I want to talk about that, because you've seen the computer evolve to what it is today. We were just watching that keynote about Rabbit,
You make me feel really old now.
but I mean, you have a lot of experience, and it fascinates me in a sense. I mean, I've been part of the technology, the personal computer evolution for a while. You just had a couple of iterations. And so before going any further, so you and I have a relationship, and we know each other for quite a while. Do you wanna share a bit about how we met? And so that I don't talk. I talk on this podcast way too much. So
Okay. Well, ultimately, the first time we really met, or that I remember meeting, was on one of the Atlassian events, App Week in Berlin. We were over, and obviously we started chatting, and at that time, really about anything Atlassian and the world. And afterwards, we stayed in contact via Slack, and ultimately, after quite a few conversations, it turned out, ended up in us investing in your first business, which you exited from. So it's been a long while, and a very, very interesting one, I have to say.
yes, it has been. You've seen Jigsaw from the early days.
Absolutely.
Because when we met, it was 2019, and it was less than a year since us launching our first product on the marketplace.
I think it was just about when you quit Mudano, and Nikki was still working there, but considering leaving, or working on Jigsaw full-time as well, wasn't it?
No. In summer 2019, when we met, we were still full-time employees.
Yeah.
At Mudano, and basically Nikki already, when we started conversations about getting investment in December 2019, beginning of 2020, Nikki already quit, and I was still working there.
Okay, this way around.
Yeah, the other way around. But yeah, it was less than a year. I remember we were getting so excited when we were in Berlin that week. We were at the event, but in parallel, things were unfolding, because it was after we launched a couple of really good features that Jira users were looking for, and we were seeing installations start ramping up. And I remember that we were at around $500 MRR at that point. Yeah. Before the event, we were maybe 300 something, and we saw like 150, 200 extra dollars over the event, and we were thinking, this is getting serious.
That's always an exciting time with an app. My experience very often is, you rarely have an app that takes off overnight and starts. So they're all really crawling in the marketplace, having very low traction. And you also have the thing that a lot of enterprise customers wouldn't really install an app that has 20 installs or 30 installs. Oh yeah. So usually once you get beyond 100, 200 kind of installs, then things also start to take off a little bit faster, because you have more people who consider you as a serious vendor, and this app might still be around in a year's time. And I always find that absolutely exciting if you either hit the feature or have the right blog post or get mentioned by Atlassian somewhere, when this time is where really this slow, one install a week or 2-3 installs a week really changes to 2-3 installs a day, and that stuff. For me, that's one of the most thrilling times about an app.
it was quite exciting, and I don't know, that was a bit of a catalyst for us to push a bit more. I think we really enjoyed that app week back then. We really enjoyed talking to you and others in the Atlassian ecosystem. We were the newbies in the room and so shy, like, oh yeah, we're Jigsaw. We built this app. And I remember that we were hacking Octo we were creating component management over that hackathon. So it was really interesting. Right. So I just wanted to get that out of the way because we're not. I've had recently a lot of founders, a lot of guests that I haven't met before, and it was the first time we ever met. We know each other for a couple of years, and I know a bit about yourself, but I also want to treat this forum here to find out a bit more about you. When you, so was it when you got your first computer, when you were a teenager or kid, that you started getting excited about and curious about the technology behind that computer in the computer world, or how did you got to eventually say, I'm gonna work in tech?
Oh, I mean, like I said, I was something like 8, 9 years when I got the first computer, so I can't really remember why I got it. But I would usually say the other way around. Usually I'm curious about something, and that's why I get stuff like a computer or like an iPhone or anything else, because I'm naturally curious in general and very much towards technology um, as a whole. And to one degree, working in tech just happened. Yeah, because I was spending the time anyway. So after this first job in a software company, besides still going to normal school, I also with a friend of mine, we started going into the mailbox, not business, but just as a hobby, in running a mailbox. So dial-in mailbox with dial-in modems. There could be some crazy stories with us sitting with hair dryers on top of those. We got donated a lot of modems from Creative, which was a local modem manufacturer. But we got them donated because they were buggy, they were overheating. So whenever we had
Okay.
some large updates to do, or so, we would sit or put hair dryers on top of on cold on top of those modems to keep them cool and the connection stable. But then we had the highest speed available at that time, and stuff like that. That just I'm just enthusiastic about it. So we were running the mailbox together with a friend of mine. And that's ultimately how I also got into knowing networking, because then the internet started to become a thing. So we got a leased line to the local university and ended up being the first ISP in our area of Germany, where people could, as private or normal people, could get internet access and dial in and have that. And obviously to build that, I had to learn a lot.
Oh yes.
There weren't too many people you could even ask the whole stuff. You were in IRC, Internet Relay Chat, if anyone remembers out there. So that's
Yeah. IRC. I
WhatsApp
remember.
20 years ago, kind of thing, very text-based. But that's where you could get help
Yeah.
and things and talk to other people. But obviously, being very enthusiastic about it, we've built all this, and we didn't make any money with it. And making money with it was never really the important thing. Making some money was important to buy new hardware or to finance the leased line and that stuff. So it wasn't all free because we didn't have any money. But every dollar someone paid us, we would invest back in that. So we didn't see it as a business. We saw it much more as a hobby. But that was obviously a way where I learned a lot of the networking skills, and then to a degree, I was also lucky that was in the time of the internet boom. So
Oh yeah. Everyone
um,
wanted a landline at that point.
yeah, so I felt like one of the 9 people in Germany who's ever heard of Cisco and Cisco routers, and I got people asking me, "Hey, do you want to do this job? Can you work for us? Do you want to work for us?" and those kind of things. So. Um, I think there were maybe 1 or 2 jobs in my life where I actually applied for something. The other thing just came to me.
I'm curious, when you're doing this, you said you weren't doing it for a profit, but you were charging people for the internet line. How were you charging people? Was it like bank transfer, or how was it?
Yeah, ultimately it was more like a typical club. So you had a membership fee and some internet hours included in that membership fee, and sorry, I call it subscription service today.
Yeah.
So yeah, ultimately you had a couple of hours included in that, and if people went above that, they had to really bank transfer some money
Okay.
to buy another hour package, and then they could use that up.
And was this like lines in people's houses, and they were using their computers, or
They were using their telephones. Yeah, I mean,
telephones? Yeah.
really modems. So it was dial-in.
But I suppose,
modems.
and it was just a neighborhood thing that you were doing, or because I suppose you need the in a sense of some infrastructure where you're pulling cables and stuff.
Not so much. I mean, at that time we did have a leased line to the university to get internet access from the university. So that was really a leased line, permanently there, everything. And then we had essentially a bank of initially, I think, 16 analog modems and 16 telephone lines connecting to those modems that people could dial into. And then over time, obviously, ISDN as sort of digital telephone network came out. So we had digital modems, 32 lines, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because I remember, so at first you were dialing in, so you're dialing a number, you get a signal, and that would be your internet feed.
You weren't permanent. I mean, it's hard to comprehend today for some people but you didn't have a permanent internet connectivity. Yes, you would dial into, like making a phone call. And as long as you were on the phone call, you would have internet access.
Yeah, so you
didn't. Those were actually some of the highest charges on that phone call. If you were 5 hours in the internet, you obviously had to pay us some fee for those hours. But you also had to a 5-hour phone call, which was still reasonably expensive at that time from the phone companies. So having internet access wasn't super affordable. I mean, not super expensive, but it did cost a fair amount. And it was obviously, compared to today's standards, hella slow.
Yeah, I remember, because we were getting like, I didn't had a computer with internet back then, but I had a friend that had this, and his parents were giving him ration of an hour or 2 hours per day. And it was still, that's all we knew at that point, right? Because everything was pay by minute, pay by text, pay by whatever. So you would pay for your phone calls all the time, and you'd pay for your texts and so on. So it was status quo to pay for an hour of internet.
Yeah, not even just that. It's also then you were blocking the phone line. So
yes,
if the husband was online for 5 hours, the wife could.
Yeah. If there was an emergency somewhere and someone would try to call you, it's like, I'm on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
When was this? When did you start this internet?
Oh,
business?
Good question. I know my 99, 98. So. Yeah, 97, 90, 95, probably 94, 95.
And and what happened to that business? Was it that you got offers for work and such and you fizzled it down, or did you close it down when everyone started moving to kind of like the internet?
Ultimately a company took it over to really try to commercialize it, and they ended up making some money on it. But I moved on at some point, just because I did a lot of networking projects. Then I didn't have the time to help anymore. Like I said, I saw it more as a hobby than as a business that I was running, and a lot of it because when we started, I wasn't even 18 yet. So it was in the name of the guy who did it with me. So he then transferred it to that company. So never made any money out of it, but that was not the point. But I learned hell of a lot, and that gave me a
Oh yeah.
fantastic foundation to. I mean, a lot of the other projects I would have never been offered if people wouldn't have known me and seen me, or know that I'm one of the people who's actually touched a Cisco router before. So yeah.
I've had the exact same pattern of getting into technology in a sense, and coding and such. It was just the necessity of and the curiosity of it. Like I just found this topic and I was super curious of it, and I started doing stuff on my own, and that led to a wealth of opportunities in other directions. I feel that this is one of the things that people kind of nowadays, well, you have the AI and you have a bunch of technologies like this that are coming up, but there's a lot of folk out there that don't experience this that much. They don't have the awareness and the visibility over the fact that we, back in the days when the personal computer was starting, when the internet was starting, we were just super nerds and curious about all of this stuff. How does it work? How does it...
But I think that is sort of a repeating theme. The technology you start with, they don't tend to be overly curious about how it works. Yeah, my granddad was a engineer for TV sets, so he's seen TV sets coming up from black and white and those things, and would open them up, would build them, would lay people antennas and all that stuff. He could tell you exactly how a TV set works. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I started growing up, I would turn it on and watch stuff. I mean, nowadays I roughly know how a TV set used to work, but I was not curious about it. It was the technology I was growing up with, and computers were the new stuff. So I was totally new to it. If you look at my kids now, a tablet is just normal. Yeah, they don't ask how does a tablet work, what is wireless, how does wireless work. They just don't. They are not curious about that. They might be more curious about AI or some other things that's new to them. I think if you look at the generation, that's always the case. The tech that's already there, that's not really new anymore. You just take for granted and never ask the question, how does it work?
Oh yeah, completely agree. But I'm talking more from the concept of being ultra curious with up and coming technologies and getting into it and cracking it up and figuring out, thinking, oh, I've set this up for myself. Can I give it to my buddy? And like you did with the internet lines, and then make a neighborhood business out of it and so on. There is, maybe I'm a bit detached from it. I think there is the AI, and there's a lot of people that are curious and kind of like opening that up and looking and poking and figuring out what people can do. But I don't know, from the outside, to me, because I'm probably older, it just feels like we're not that curious anymore. There's try a lot to figure out way for easy money and to generate revenue, and curiosity when it comes to technology, it seems to be more of a progression path where you've had a certain education, you went into certain means of working, and you evolved from various roles into something that gives you the let's say the title of data scientist, this that. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I feel that the technology being a lot more rudimentary back in the days, it was a lot easier for us to get into it, and maybe we were a bit more curious.
Yes, I also think, I absolutely think there's some truth to that. Also, I think we were forced to figure out more things ourselves, because
True.
now you have, and even I see that and feel that you have YouTube tutorials and that stuff. So if I want to know how to do something, I just go to YouTube, watch a tutorial, and you're fine. And it's amazing because I can do things, even plumbing or some crazy stuff like that, which I would otherwise never have done or touched.
Oh yeah.
But just when we were young, a lot of that wasn't there. Yeah, sometimes you could read a book, but even then, on a lot of the technology that we dealt with, there was very little information around. Then maybe not in English, maybe not even in your first language and that kind of thing. So you had to play around and figure out a lot more because just less information was available. But on the other hand, I still see a lot of people who are very curious about things, and I think that is one of the tip. I mean, it's a beaten down thing. It's like find whatever you're passionate about. Yeah, I mean, 1,000 people have said that, but I think there's a big truth to that, because I couldn't have done what I've done if I would have to get up in the morning and force myself, oh, I need to read a book today on Cisco iOS or what's new on Cisco. If that would have been hard for me, yeah, then I could have never learned as much and worked as much as I did. Just because there was no clear differentiation, because I would read Cisco iOS release notes or anything just in the evening because I was curious what's happening, what's coming out, what's new, and maybe even try that out in the evening just because I was curious. That was the only way to learn as much and be as quick as I ended up being, and which was part of the success I had at that time. So I think there's a lot to be said about if you find something where work or the thing doesn't feel like hard work to you because you're naturally curious and it interests you and it gives you a push by doing that. And AI today is the same thing for me. Again, that I'm just trying to use it everywhere because I'm curious about it, want to know its limitations and so on. That really makes a big difference. Yeah. And I think that is really where a lot of people have a difference if they're happy in their jobs or not, is if they have found something and can work on something that they're really truly curious about.
Do you think that this generation has it harder than we did growing up? I mean, you're also quite earlier than myself, so you've had even more, I would say, early on technologies and things just coming out and so on. And but I feel that while I was growing up as well, there was a lot of concepts and a lot of tech coming out, and it'd be easy for you to figure out and dabble with it and come up with new things to do. But do you reckon that today's generation has it harder in that sense?
I don't think so. I think so. It's just different. Yeah, I would call it more different than harder or easier. I think they're just different challenges. Yeah, or even if I look at my parents, they had a lot different challenges than I had growing up. For us, it was harder to get to information. It was most of the time our parents were poorer, so we couldn't afford a lot of things. So if I wanted a gadget, I had to work for it, not because my parents didn't want to buy it for me, just they didn't, with paying off their house, and they just had barely enough money to make do on normal things. So if they sent me to a school trip, it was any of the money they had spare, and they couldn't afford their own holiday anymore to send me on a 5-day school trip. So they just couldn't afford all that. And I think today a lot of parents, or many parents, are in a better place financially, so that if I look at my kids, they get a lot more than I ever had. But I think that's different today. I think the challenges are much more that there's on some side maybe too much information, that some things that you need to learn how to deal with distractions and focus. And so I wouldn't say it's easier or harder. It's just different. Yeah, and there are challenges in today's generation. There are challenges in the generation from 10, 15 years ago that starts working today and that we're hiring, where we see where they sometimes struggle, and they're different, but not necessarily easier or worse.
Yeah. There is a certain level of, I would say, an increased comfort of today versus, when, you had your parents, my parents, having to work hard and just ration certain things around your way of living and so on. And I think technology has contributed in our evolution, in a sense. With technology has contributed to us doing better. And I don't want to generalize, because there are a lot of people in the world that aren't doing even as good as our parents were in the past. But I think that helps. It's always this generational conflict, in a sense, right? Where you look to younger people and say, you guys have it so good, and you guys are lazy, and you guys are into these weird things in terms of interest and so on. But it's a pattern, you're right. Every single generation goes through different challenges. And at the end of the day, because the things that we were going through, they don't exist that much anymore, at least in our world. And no one sees them as challenges, right? So that's part of the standard. That's the base. And then there's like other things that people are facing. And when I say people, I say, the 20-year-olds and teens today.
I mean, yeah, like I said, a lot of that is absolutely right. And like I said, I see it more as each generation has different challenges. It's got different bonuses and things they start from, but none are without their challenges. And even if you say in a lot of things they have it easier today, that's true, but that is a challenge in itself. Because, generally, life is hard, yeah? And it's very often the hard things that you do in life where you learn a lot, where it gives you a good grounding, where it gives you an appreciation of or gratitude for the wins you have and that stuff that help you being happy as a person. And if everything is easy and you don't do the hard stuff anymore, tend to make people miserable most of the time. Yeah. And so I think some people who had very easy for them, the hard part is to learn to do more of those hard things anymore. I mean, I learned more from, Misfit founder. So I truly learned a lot more from the things where I really struggled, which were hard projects, which have driven me very hard, where I even came close to burnout or those kind of things, or even the things where I outright failed. These are the things I learned most. And honestly, a lot of them is the stuff I'm most proud about today. Not the easy wins, not the lucky guesses, or I've picked this and it was a winner.
So you're not proud of Jigsaw then?
Okay, that's not true.
I'm joking.
I know, but it's a good point. No, I'm very proud of Jigsaw, and for me, the Jigsaw time was easy, but you guys had the hard things to do. But what I'm trying to say, I think it's just different challenges. And the other funny part is, obviously, being a parent, you think you have to deal with the tantrums of your kids and all those things. So as a couple of years back, I was reading sort of this generation, they don't have any respect anymore. They don't behave. They don't. They talk bad to their elders and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I can fully relate to that. That's actually fully true. And then you look at who wrote it. It wrote Socrates. Yeah, sort of.
That's
many
always been the case.
Yes, back.
I was going to say, weren't the articles and the writings always like this?
Yeah, and that's totally true. And then you realize it's always been the case. It's always that kind of phases, and it's never the same. It's different, but there's still some repetition on that. The parents think the kids are a lot less respectful. We weren't as bad as kids, and you know what? We were.
Yes, definitely. And that's what kind of pulls me back sometimes. Sometimes I have these moments of, this is happening. I don't understand these 20-year-olds that are getting into the workforce. They have challenges with this. They're not doing this. They're like this. And the reality of it is that we're living in a completely different world. But, even when I was growing up, I've had, in terms of career and growth, and probably yourself as well, because it doesn't seem like, I want to ask you this, but first, to finish my thought, like when I was growing up and I started doing business and so my parents wanted me to, my mom, not my mom, my dad wanted me to go to law university and become a lawyer and all of these jobs that were quite common and some prolific in those times. And the fact that I started getting into business and being a founder and entrepreneur, it was, although my dad was an entrepreneur as well, but for him was like, no, you have the means, you should go do university and such. So it was kind of disruptive in that sense as well. So it's always been, even in the workforce, new generations coming in, kind of disruptive and innovative in terms of what it means to work. How was it in Germany? Because you had an interesting start, right? So you got curious, you got into this internet thing, and then that got picked up by someone else, and you said that you started getting opportunities for jobs. In Germany, what's usually is it the same as we had, where you go through a school system to higher degrees, and then as an engineer, as this, as that, and then you follow a path with your degree into workforce?
Yeah, I mean it's very similar. You have different lines you can go in the school system, but ultimately once you finish there, you can go to university or some similar places where you get sort of apprenticeships where you get taught if it's more of a job where you don't typically go to university for. Yes, and I went to school and straight into those projects and working afterwards.
Did you do uni?
No.
So you were like...
Actually, I did a bit of uni just a couple years after
Right.
I started working because I needed a break. So, but no, I just went into... at that time, you also had to do military service for a year in Germany. So after
Right,
school
yeah.
was my military service. And then it's when usually people went to university. But I already picked during the military service something I could do where I would be a week there on base and then a week off. So you would work pretty much 7 days straight on 24-hour kind of shifts with some sleep in between, but then you had a week off. So that I could actually still do some projects and work in the other week, do things. But even going back to your original question, I mean, in my family, there was no one who had his own business or anything. So it was very common. And even at that time, it was still very common that you would work for a company for 30, 40 years, or even some people start or have their apprenticeship in one company and then retire from that company once they are 65.
It feels
me
such an
doing
alien
project, me creating my own company to do those projects and that stuff was just not very it's not unheard of, but it was just not the typical life path you set. And then my parents had all the concerns we would have from young age. Don't be that much at the computer, don't be that much in front of the TV, don't do this and that stuff. And don't you want a normal job somewhere and that stuff which pays you money and those kind of things. But obviously with the money I earned and and the projects I did, and very often I would take them along, or they would visit me if I was somewhere else, and I would invite them over for 2-3 weeks to have their holiday because I wouldn't otherwise travel in the world. I think they understood very, very quickly that things are working out relatively well for me.
Yeah. 30, 40 years with the same company. I feel that today is such a foreign concept. It's like, what did something go wrong? In the past, it used to be like, if you would leave quicker than 10 years, it'd be like, what went wrong? And now if you stay for 40 years, like, what went wrong in your career?
But then again, the funny thing, I totally agree. But then the funny thing is, it's like my 26th year in resolution now.
Yeah, what went wrong in your career, Christian? What was the first company? And we'll get to resolution. But what was the first company that hired you? What were you doing?
Well, ultimately, It was already resolution, but I was essentially what other people would today do say as freelancing. And
That was after the internet company.
yeah, true. I was never officially hired. I mean, I never really worked there for money.
So you've never been a full-time employee?
I did in the mean. I mean, this legal now for even for Resolution. I'm a full-time employee, but it's
Right,
still my
yeah.
own company. No, I worked for. I did breaks from Resolution for a year or two.
Okay.
Where I was a full-time employee, but yeah, always just doing a project. So it was always relatively clear I'm not going to stay there. Sometimes it's just if you do a lot of things international, in some countries it's easier to be a freelancer. In other countries it's easier to just be hired by the company and then leave after a year. But that was all very intentional project work.
So you are based on your career and the multitude of years. I said 27 years of Resolution.
Yeah, 26 or 27. In 98 we founded Resolution, so you can do the math.
So it's like you're the definition of a rogue professional, aka entrepreneur. Like you've not seen yourself in a role in someone else's company, full-time employee for a very long time. You always wanted your own path.
That's how it looks today, yes. But I never saw it that way, or never. It was never as intentional as you make it out now. But I think that's actually true with a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, you get those graphs on the internet, like this is how the path to success looks like, and it's like a straight line to whatever, and reality is like up, down, and whatever craziness. Yeah, I never looked at it with that intentionality. So I looked much more in what I was doing and what interested me. And I also wanted to see the world when I was young. Yeah, and I'm very glad nowadays that I did. But I also didn't want to travel like most people do on holidays, like 2 weeks here and that's it. So I wanted to really see something, how people live, how they are, meet some of the locals. And in my time, I mean, today you might accept a job that's remote work and then travel from place to place, stay there for a couple of months, go ahead. But obviously when I was young, remote work wasn't a thing. So the only way I could do that is do projects in different countries or different cities. Usually a couple of months up to a year, that kind of thing. So and that's what drove me much more, because it was at that time building large networks. So I was always very often attracted to the project, what I had to build, or the challenges in it. That's what I would choose, and the best way of doing that was having your own company or being a freelancer, and then be there for the project. What I never wanted was being stuck in a company and then manage the network that someone else excitedly built, manage that network for the next 15 years until it gets refreshed. So I didn't see it as I wanted to be the entrepreneur in charge of that, but I wanted to see things of the world, and that was easy doing project to project, and I wanted to do exciting stuff.
And I mean that I feel that that's kind of like subconscious attraction to staying a bit more on your own, in a sense, as in not getting super attached to, let's say, a bigger company and being there for a career trajectory and so on, because that implies a lot less flexibility, a lot more time spent close to teams, to individuals, to that company, and so on. So I think it was willing, unwilling in a sense. It sounds like. So you were doing, like you mentioned, freelancing in the kind of like what is today freelancing, which is like contracting and doing projects with resolution. Was it called resolution at the beginning?
Was very early on Renico, Reichert Network Consulting. But then I can't even remember why. At some point we did change the name to Resolution, I think after a year or two. So it's been 23, 24 years of Resolution.
And where did that come from, the name?
Reichert Network Solutions. That's the Resolution is sort of the short form of that.
I've never realized that. What the hell? I always thought it was resolution, as in resolution, and solving something, right?
And also at that time, it was, I mean, you did a lot of emails, and very often you had this RE. So that's also where our original logos came from, which you still have in the different colors today, like RE Solution. Sort of the thought of we are the solution.
Okay. But it's also a good play on resolution, which is, solving something, the solved bit of it. That's really really interesting. And you build a resolution up and sold it eventually, like sold the service business. Tell me a bit about that.
Essentially, it was a business unit that we sold. So we never sold the whole company.
Yeah.
Just what we were doing. Again, a lot of that came natural. So I would be invited to join a project somewhere, being paid for it. And then what would usually happen, because I tended to pick big, complex, complicated projects, because that was what I got excited about. And then very often when I was in there, the project team needed to grow, because I might be the first senior engineer in it, doing a lot of the architecture and so on. And then comes the time where you actually need to implement it and need a lot more people to do the implementation. So, and very naturally, then the customers or the people I was working with would come to me. Hey, do you know anyone we can hire and that stuff? So ultimately, that meant me initially having a network, and then afterwards hiring people into Resolution, and they would join me in those projects. And even then, to customers I worked for before, I would keep relationships, and they would still ask, hey, can you come back to do this? And I'd say, no, I'm not available, but I've got this colleague here, so he can come and that stuff, and I'll support him, those kind of things. So that's how sales very naturally happened. And initially it was very word of mouth based, and then afterwards obviously had relationships with a couple of companies implementing networks, and they would reach out to me when they needed some help. And that's how originally the whole business did grow to some 20, 25-ish people. Okay. And I was still doing my own projects, but that became very challenging, sort of being the more or less relationship-based salesperson, hiring those people, training them up, and doing that all while you're still doing your project. So at that size, it was really the where I needed to make a decision if I want to do that more full-time, or essentially running the company became my full-time job, rather than doing my own projects and running the company on the side.
When you started getting to those numbers, did you had to start getting into management, supervising, and things like that, or was it? Because I know there are also service companies that hire professionals, train them, like you mentioned, and then send them off to projects, and they're basically working for that client there. There's not much of an interlock within them. Was it that kind of setup, or did you had to manage, oversee, collaborate with the rest of the team?
Well,
and how did you
a bit of everything. I think the first things I had to learn is that most companies die by running out of cash, not lack of profitability. So once we started hiring people, because there was typically a gap of I mean, the customers would pay us month by month on the day rates, but there was still a gap of like you hire a person, need to spend some time to training them, so it might be 2-3 months before they can go productive on a onto a project, and then once you have them on the project, there would still be after a month you would raise the first invoice. There would be another 2 months before the customer would actually start to pay the first invoice. So per person, you actually had something like 50,000-60,000 of cash to have, to lay out, to pay,
Right.
before you would get actually the first invoice being paid. And if you do that with 5, 6, 7, 8 people, that's a big amount of money you need to have first before you can actually before you actually get some return or things. So it was all on paper profitable because you're making the money and all of that, but cash flow was I think the first not hard, but the first lesson I had to learn, that can really restrict the growth of a company, and find solutions for that. So that was one thing. Then afterwards, a little bit like you say, a couple of the challenges that we had were when people were on the customer side all the time, how do you keep a relationship with them? How do you make sure they still feel part of your company? Don't just go to the customer. I always thought when people join us, they would do that for 2-3 years, learn a lot during that time, and then end up with one of our customers.
Right.
If they didn't want to have the project lifestyle anymore. In reality, people stayed a lot longer with us than I expected, and many of them then still ended once they got kids and that thing. That's when then I said, oh, it's time to stop the traveling, so I want to stay with this customer, move my family here, and those kind of things. So it wasn't that I said, oh, it's going to be terrible because they go to customers. I always saw it as I'll have one of the best allies in that customer. Whenever they need help, they come to me first. So it was always the model that they would leave at some point. So I was, if anything, more surprised that they stayed as long as they stayed. But certainly making sure they feel at home in the company was part of the job, but also make sure that they kept learning and learned a lot, because they obviously very often started with a relatively low salary with us, and the way they ultimately also made their money was by becoming getting onto senior level engineer very quickly, within 2-3 years, by having the right project and those things, and then getting those kind of salaries, and even higher when they left us, while other people joining bigger companies, they might have been promoted from first line support engineer to second line support engineer in that same time frame, not getting a big bump in salary along the time. So I think that's one of the key things. People doing those kind of projects, and I experienced that myself, they would learn a lot in a very short time frame. And part of my job was that they were always challenged, so that I put them in project which would challenge them, but we could also give them a little bit of the safety net of knowing there's someone else who will help me when I struggle. And we always did. So they could always call me or their colleagues at 1 o'clock in the night, hey, I'm having a problem here. And everyone would help. And what that also did, inadvertently, it had created a incredible team bonding among the people, and that's part of why they stayed as long as they did. And even if we meet up today or anything, we still talk about the good old times. And most people, including myself, never got that team bonding anymore afterwards.
That makes a lot of sense, and it does seem like you built a company with people, employees that were contracted to companies, where it wasn't much more around structure or organization management and layers of structures and such. It quite flat, where everyone would go and do work for, as a representative of your company inside these other organizations. And then, like you said, the entire team bonded because, it was your people and they would help each other. And that became quite a strong bond and connection
Exactly, and
between.
I always had the expectations, or set the expectations also with the guys when they were progressing to more sort of from junior level to senior engineer, that they would take care of some of their colleagues. So there was always the expectation a senior engineer needs to look after a couple of the mid-level or junior engineers and mid-level and help them teach it. That's another relatively fundamental belief that I have, or actually not belief, it's a belief as well, but it's my experience. You've really understood the topic once you can teach it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So making sure that a mid-level engineer has some junior engineers to look after, to a degree teach them or help them explain topics where they are stuck with, and that stuff was always, and that's also how I explained it to the guys doing it, was always a thing of this also helps you, because once you can explain it, you've really understand it. And by explaining topics to other people, that's when I sometimes learned the most, because I wanted to understand it even then deeper than I otherwise would have. So that was part of the whole DNA and the expectation I set with promoting them or giving them a pay rise to become a senior engineer, but then you'd have to look after things, so that it ended up in a little bit of a pyramid type thing, not a super formal structure. So it wasn't like this guy reports to you, but we didn't have the size where we needed that.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask, how did you, what was your process or mechanism of basically promoting people from, let's say, senior to mid to, sorry, from senior, from junior to mid to senior.
Would be the wrong direction.
Downgrading. No.
We're demoting you today.
Was it feedback from the client? Was it were you doing any performance reviews? Any specific traits?
I hate performance reviews.
Me too. Yeah. Yeah.
So I hate those kind of once a year performance reviews. I think if it's like just once a year, it's not enough. So I always encourage having regular interactions. Yeah, and those things should not be or don't need to be performance reviews or that stuff. But if you talk on a regular basis, see how people are doing, what they're struggling with, and those kind of things, then a performance review in terms of giving it 1 year and really think where should the person go and that stuff, and what might be good courses for him to take. Having that as a checkpoint to sit down and think about those things. That can be helpful, but I hate this culture of we don't talk about any issues or that stuff for a year, and then there's a performance review where we bang or like other people do it, they never want to have the hard conversations, so the performance review is all happy, hunky-dory, and they turn around and I'm not happy with that guy.
Yeah.
So that's another one of the things I can only encourage people is don't avoid hard conversations, because ultimately they just get harder when you have to have them. So, and that's what I often see people do if they need to lay someone off, or there's no cultural fit or things, stuff that you can fix very early on. If you have those harder conversations or set the expectations right, they just turn into things that at some point you can't work with each other anymore, just because they put off those hard conversations since they didn't want to have them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, going back to your question, since we were having regular contact, it never felt like having to do performance reviews or anything. And yes, since I was also talking to the customers and that stuff, I got their feedback, but most of the time I could make a decent judgment by what the guys would ask me, what the feedback would be, and you could see their progress by the kind of questions they would have, or if you, hey, can you review this design for me, you would see the progress and how much better it is than maybe 6 months ago they would have been. So I was a bit intentional about it, but it didn't feel like something I had to do on top of other things, because I was close to the business and the day-to-day what they're doing, and I was still either doing projects myself or still had a lot of the knowledge from the project because I hadn't been out of it for so long. So I could do a very decent judgment. Is that person a good engineer? Does he, or what does he need to have now?
Did you had any people that in your team that kind of like disagreed with your judgment of how they're progressing and so on? And how do you usually dealt with that kind of situation?
Well, if people don't disagree with me, yeah, absolutely. I mean, how often have you disagreed with me? I think disagreement is just a part of the job. I mean, I don't watch them 24/7. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if my judgment is they're weak in one area, and I tell them that, and they give me, I don't think that's true. Here are 5 examples where I've done that and it worked very well. Then I've got a good answer to that I was wrong. I think for me, it's very often the style of those conversations. Yeah. So I don't like this, oh, you're always bad at this, because then a person just needs to give you one example, go into defensive mode, give you one example of where they haven't screwed it up, and they discount your argument. Yeah. It's much better to say, hey, I've seen you do this thing 3 times, and I really would have expected X, Y, Z. So what you delivered here, I didn't like because of these reasons. Yeah. If you're that concrete and specific in those examples that you've seen, then it's very, very often they can't argue against it, or very often they see, yeah, actually, that's probably true. And people are less likely to go into the defensive. And you're talking about concrete things, what your expectations would have been, how they could have done that better, what to learn from it. So they don't feel like you're attacking them as a person, because that's never what I want to do. Yeah. I mean, for me, the goal is always to make someone be better and help them be better. Yeah. Because inherently, I don't think anyone comes to work and thinks, oh, I'm going to do a really bad job today. Yeah. I mean, most people, when they go to their job, they want to deliver a good job. So if I give feedback, then the whole intention behind it is that I've seen things which I think are not working great, and how can I help improve that? And if you're then concrete and do those things, then people are much more open to accept that and see that, and then you don't have, then they can still object in terms of, yeah, but you don't know this, and that's the reason why I think you're wrong here. But then it's not really fighting. Then you're discussing a certain fact. I don't need to get fussed about it, and the person doesn't get so. So those feedbacks are. I've hardly ever had even a loud argument with any of the guys working with me or anything. Or if anything, it's a heated discussion because we both believe in the points, and then at some point, okay, yeah, I heard your opinion, I heard mine. That's the middle way that we can go.
To follow up with this topic as you know, team and work dynamics and such, you eventually sold the services business. You know, you got to a point where you had a really good team, really strong. People loved working for the company. And was it a customer of yours that acquired the company?
Yeah, ultimately it was a system integrator that we worked with a lot. That a public listed company. They also have a distributor, and they actually acquired at that time was 70, 80-ish people. Mm-hmm. where they acquired that part of the business, and I joined them as an employee for a while to do the integration and run that part of the business. So it did grow then. I was then responsible for the EMEA-wide services in that distributor. So it then did grow to something like 300 plus people.
Oh, wow. And were you managing all of these people?
Yes. I mean, obviously, it was much more of a structure behind it. And obviously, many different companies in Europe.
How did you find that transition? Because from what you're telling me, you had a pretty flat structure. You weren't doing management and performance reviews and all of the layers and stuff.
Okay, that's a fair point. But by the time we had reached more than 70, 80-ish people, there was more of a structure.
So you had
managers.
I
think compared to other companies, it was still flat.
Right.
But you had some team leads, engineers, someone responsible for engineering, Björn, who you know well, being part of the sales team, and someone running the sales team, someone looking after finance and HR. So you had that structure because 70, 80 people, that's too much to for one person to manage. So over time, some of that structure did grow. So the relatively structureless thing was about until sort of 25, 30 people, and then from 30 to 70, that's where I had to build a bit more structure. But most of that then came from the people in the company already. So,
and was it organic, as in, we're facing this challenge here, we need someone to oversee that, we need someone to sell this, we don't have time for this area, let's have someone from the team do it? Or how did it?
Well, yes and no. I'll give you answer this in a little bit of a roundabout way. I think where a lot of people go wrong, and I did some of those mistakes as well, because sometimes you just don't know until you do it. And I think it's part of learning, is if you promote the best sales guy to be sales director, sometimes that's the right step, but very often the best guy doing that particular job is not necessarily the best manager of the team doing those jobs. Yeah. And I think that is where a lot of people go wrong and a lot of relationships get ruined. So if in your startup the first engineer becomes your engineering lead, that might not be your best choice, because if that guy enjoys being an engineer, is good about being an engineer and enjoys his job, he might hate being an engineering lead. Yeah. So when you promote people, you really need to make sure that that's the kind of job that people want, and that it's not just for reputation or more money, that they actually really have the skills and the talents that are needed. That because a sales director needs to be a lot more process-oriented and those kind of things than a typical sales guy is. Yeah. And if you take your best horse who brings you in a lot of revenue and put him into a not so much revenue-generating role, you hurting yourself double. And if that guy leaves after a year because he's unhappy, well, you've done a really crappy thing. So what I ended up learning along the way is that I would very often try to promote people who would naturally already step up. Yeah. If you would see them, if a team is a bit structureless, if you would see someone, come on, I'm going to create this, and Mike, could you help me here and do that? And very often you would naturally see people taking on some of those responsibilities because they saw they needed doing, and they had an attitude of getting it done. And then I would usually have a conversation with that person if that's a role he would like to do. Yeah. And then really say, okay, do more of that. Let's do that as an experiment. Let's not make a big promotion or title or anything out of it, because I always want to give you the opportunity to come to me in 3-4 months and say, it's not really what I like. Let me be a really good engineer.
It's actually a very fair approach, to be honest.
And because I didn't want to lose those people in the end. And so it's not that the engineer I hired first became at some point the engineer. That's actually not, that didn't happen. I mean, that's not what happened. So the guy who actually ended up starting to do more of the organization has done a great job looking after junior engineers going far and at above. I promoted him in the end after he tried that for a bit more and said, yeah, that's the kind of thing I want to do. And then we made it official, promoted him and that kind of thing. And the other good thing that happens in that case, if people are already naturally starting to do that, usually the team accepts them outright.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because most of the times the team say, well, it's about time that you promote him. Because he's been doing that for 6 months already, kind of thing.
I've always had, you see, this is what I'm saying, it's interesting because I've always had a slightly different approach to this. And I don't think there's this is a really good approach as long as there is a lot of transparency around that. Because with Jigsaw as well, I've always kind of rushed into building people, promoting them, giving them a title and a function and a very concise, I would say, mission. And I think the reason why I've jumped into that quite often and done it quite quickly was my experience in the past with roles and other bits where people would naturally pick up stuff. You would see that and you'd get comfortable as a leader in having them develop in that direction. But in the same time, them having self-doubt of, oh, but I'm doing more of this other job. I kind of like it, but I feel that that's a different bracket type of role. I don't want to really do it. I'm not fully invested in it because I don't know whether I'm doing this at my current salary bracket and at my current title or so. So I think transparency is really important. And that's why, like, the way you can address it is, hey, you've been doing this. Would love to see you more and enable you to do more of this if you're interested in doing it. And there's a future for you in this if you want it, right?
Yeah.
That's right. But I was like, you seem to be good at this. Let's promote you to this. Let's give you these responsibilities. It comes with a salary increase, a different bracket, and so on. We'll promote you, and kind of like to put all the cards on the table up front to get them motivated. That works sometimes with people that really fit into that and they embrace it and they flourish in that. But there are often times where the pressure of that role, or they realize later down the road, a couple of months later, that no, I was actually preferring more this thing. And I've had a couple of occasions where it got a bit awkward because, this person after a couple of months realized that I actually love more what I was doing, and the pressures of this and the extra responsibilities and so on, I'm not into it. And I think transparency and giving it some time to bake is important. Yeah.
But even this allowing people to step down, if you have the right team, then that works as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the great thing about business. There's just not one right way of running a business, and all other ways are wrong. Yeah, it's a nice thing. You can experiment, and many different leadership styles work very well.
Yeah, true. There's there's always challenges, and there's always things to scratch your head around. What did you hate so much about being full-time after you sold that business?
It had not been. What I hated were a couple of things, but none of that had to do with being a full-time employee.
Right.
Yeah. It was actually so running from a 70, 80 people team company, however you call it, business unit to getting into a 4,000 people company who mostly sells boxes or IT distributor, so they sell hardware generally. That was a big shift, and then even to the point that you could say there was a lot of success in it in terms of increasing that to like 300 people across EMEA and all that. There's still a couple of things, or there are a couple of things that I learned about myself that I don't like. Yeah, and I think getting older has one big advantage in a lot of the different things that you've done.
Right, because you don't care anymore. You can be a grump without caring.
No, I'm hardly ever grumpy. No, but you can actually also learn a lot about yourself. What is the stuff that you really like, and what's the stuff that you don't like? Yeah, and there's a lot of people who are great in running companies from small to big, or be in a 10,000 people company running them, or be a vice president and run a division of 500-600 people and be very happy about it. But I'm not one of those. So the things I enjoy most is working with a small team where you can all be still relatively close, know a little bit what's going on in each other's world. So being in a 10 people, 20, 30, maybe 40, but at some point that's where it, I think if I look back at the 70, 80 people range, that was already on the verge of being too big for me. Yeah. For me to really enjoy it. Yeah, and that's why Resolution at the moment, we are a little bit less than 30 people. That's an awesome size to do kick-ass stuff. So what was running such a division, what was the things that I didn't like is most of the time only the shit comes to you. So stuff other people couldn't solve. Yeah. So you spend probably a lot of you definitely spend a lot of your time, or I had to spend a lot of your time solving negative things that no one else could solve. Yeah, and that tends to give you always that if you all the time focus on negative things, you see a lot more of negative things. So that's not mental health wise. I didn't find that very well. And the other thing is I had my personal assistant. She would be in charge of my calendar, and the most anybody would usually get is 30 minutes with me. So most of my day was 30-minute slots with different people, different topics, and so on. That meant I could very often not completely fully understand the situation or anything. I was good at that, yeah. So they would have loved to keep me and keep going like that, or even grow it further. It's not that I was bad about it, I just didn't like it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's another one of my relatively fundamentals is spend so much time at work. We should try if we can. I know I appreciate that some people don't have the choice, or many people don't have the choice. But if you have the choice, then don't focus on the money, the reputation, or anything. Pick a job that you're really enjoying, you're happy with.
So when you were managing, you said at 1.400.
Yeah.
Was it, because I always see these very senior head of and management roles that manages a fleet of people as potentially, if not done right, or not even if not done right, because of the logistics of it, a bit detached from the, I would say, the interpersonal side of things, because you don't work with a flat team, and you kind of get to interlock and engage and empathize with absolutely everyone. You're at that point where you have a few people here that kind of report into, and you oversee the big picture. And as you said, especially with things like no one gets more than 30 minutes slots because you're busy, like you're busy and you have so many moving parts. Did you feel that that was one of the things that?
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. I mean, you lose a lot of the sight to what other people on the ground doing. Yeah, and also, and these are the things that that were somewhat hard for me. I have a hard time to accept if there's a waste in the company. Yeah, so if people work on things that just don't matter or some kind of thing, and the bigger an organization you get, the more of that you also have, and
Yeah.
you need to accept that.
Yeah.
Yeah, even with 30 people, there's a level of that happening, and I'm not very good at accepting that or making
Wasting time.
or making my peace with that. So other people can say, I don't care, or it's just part of that 10% is just wasted. That's just life. And I had to do that as well in that position to on one hand to accept it, but I could never make good peace or was never happy about having to accept it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, what's much harder is if you have 2 or even sometimes 3 layers of management, different nationalities, and so on, is to get a certain message across. Yeah. If we have 30 people, we're in a room, and I can talk to everyone or can talk with most people at the same time or in a Zoom call, then it's relatively easy to get a message across. But it's not what people experience from the company. Their first line manager, the person really they're reporting to, sets such a big example. It doesn't matter too much if the big boss comes on a Zoom once a month, says something, and then the guy you're working with behaves totally different. 39 hours a week.
100%.
So and accepting that or having to deal with that was just not what I enjoyed. So it's much nicer for me to have that very direct communication and to do some crazy stuff with a small team as opposed to do a lot of different things with a big team.
I think there's 2 things that kind of like stand out to me from what I know about you so far. One is you are really good at being genuine with your team. So like, as in, because I've seen you in a couple of team calls and so on. So you're really good at just speaking truthfully and being like with the team and being able to motivate the team and like just be genuine and real. And I feel that when you're at 400, if you want to go on a call with 400 people and give an update, there's a lot of PR work being done. There's a lot of, preparations, slides, a bunch of other people in the team having to distribute responsibilities of who's saying what and so on. It becomes this big PR, at least the things that I've seen. I suppose that must probably been one of the sides of it.
Yeah, it's more of that, or people also assume that's the case. So even if you're as truthfully and honest and straightforward as I always like to be, because I very often have sort of a zero tolerance for bullshit, then it's not that people experience as genuine. If they know you as a person, then they know, oh yeah, that he's the same regardless if that's a job topic or if that's if he goes out with friends and things. But if the people don't have that kind of personal relationship with you, they don't necessarily see that in the same light.
And we're all different, and if we all see, if you see someone that you don't know as an individual giving a speech, in a sense, like talking about or communicating something, and that's the only setup that you ever see them, and whatever you hear from your line manager about them or this or that, we also very individuals when it comes to analyzing and processing and consuming and understanding people in general. So you might have a portion that thinks something about you, you might have a portion that thinks something else, and so on. I think the second thing is you're a very hands-on person. Um, Even when I met you in the early days and so on, even at in 2019, you were coding, you were hacking away with your team there, and then even the other evening, work us coding AI stuff. And I suppose when you're at that level, there's not much hands-on. There's
Your
absolutely
life
zero.
is more Excel sheets and PowerPoints.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
very true.
so that kind of like these were as alongside with the stuff that you told me, the catalyst for you to go back to resolution, the company that you are still owning, and do something completely different.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, it's also lucky that we started the Atlassian business on the side already. I mean, the first plugin we wrote was SAML single sign-on for Jira and Confluence. And to make a long story short, it was a problem that annoyed me, so I got it solved, and then we turned it into, it's there's a marketplace, so if we have the problem, someone else might have it too, and then release it to the marketplace, and it found some growth there, and it's a lot of it is history from there. So I was lucky in that respect that we had that Atlassian business starting to generate some money as well, and I could see, I think there is something if you do it right, and it could be very successful. So I had a good alternative to go to as well.
Did you had to bootstrap? How did it work? Because you're coming out of this role, you got some money from selling the consultancy business, you moving into full-time Atlassian developer. How did that financial dynamic work? Did you brought in a bunch of cash, or what happened?
It's very funny that I say that as one of the person who invests in other companies, but we never took any investment, and I never. The only thing I brought into the company was sort of the base capital that we laid out very initially in Germany. That for a limited company, it's I think 25,000 euros. That was split between my partner in the business and myself, and I never ever put in any money other than that.
So it was all generated from Atlassian. So but were you paying yourselves?
Not. I mean, most of the time, yes, but also there have been times where even in the professional service business, we had times where times were tough, and I would rather not take a couple of salaries and lay off people. So, but most of the time,
Right.
I've been getting a salary, and in good times, I also got a incredibly decent salary, or obviously dividends in the company.
So it does sound like when
So
yeah.
the formal answer would be we all bootstrapped it from
Right.
from initially the projects we did, and even if we went more into the Atlassian business, obviously Resolution had some reserves from the past business and that stuff. So we used some of that cash that we still had in the company to build out the Atlassian business, and that very quickly also started to pay for itself.
Okay, I see that makes sense. So you didn't have the extensive period of time where you weren't getting paid, or the Atlassian took a long time to get off the ground.
No, that was a couple of months at max, and in those periods where if I wouldn't take a salary.
And it was when you started. I mean, started because you're already doing it, but when you left the consultancy, the work that you were doing there, the consultancy for your full-time role, you started with your co-founder, with your partner. You got into it full-time in the same time, or did he come later, or how did that work?
No, actually, we started Resolution together.
Oh,
the
the
whole years
consultancy.
back, yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It was his name is Chris Bloom. He was someone I did know before in terms of around the networking kind of area, and when I started doing the projects, I could have done that as a more freelancer without my own limited company.
Right.
But I never wanted to be alone or work alone. And there's also some additional sort of protections if you have a limited company as opposed to doing it yourself, where you're responsible, or where you're liable with everything you have. So and that's where I decided to create Resolution, but also do it with Chris together. Originally, initially, because he was working on some of the projects I got in as well. So, and he had the same problem. So initially we created a Resolution essentially so that we didn't do normal freelancing and a bit of protection, and then it had grown. So we were doing that essentially together from the start.
You said you never wanted to start a business alone. Why was that?
I never wanted to be alone. I mean,
why was that? What were some of the thinking there? Some of your reasoning?
Just
you wanted to have a buddy.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't even know if I have a good answer. I mean, I knew some people who were freelancer. They were always just by themselves, working by themselves, and I think I always wanted to work in a team, even if it started off just a team of two.
Okay, that's pretty clear, and I completely understand it. Like, that's the way I am right now, and that's how I've always wanted to start. In a sense, I failed with a lot of founders in the past, but like I feel that I've always never wanted to go on my own and do things alone. We talked about this. I'm a bit of a. I need some balancing.
Yeah, same here. I also like in general, if I can bounce ideas off someone else and those kind of things, or even if you look at how I think about teams, I would never want a team 5 times myself. Yeah, it's all having different skill sets and complementing each other. And Chris was one of I think I was a damn good engineer, but I couldn't even keep up with him anywhere close. So he was one of the most talented engineers that I've ever seen, which is why I ended up with sales and other stuff in the days.
You've been relegated.
But no, I think we've been a very good team. In Resolution nowadays, he doesn't engage that much. He looks after another business that we have together, Your Freedom, which is more VPN type of service, not as big as Resolution or anything, but that's his baby. But we're still both we're still talking a lot of things. I mean, on every of the company events he's there. We still talk like once a month or so, how the business is going, or if I have an idea, then what he thinks about it, etc. So, and I think that's also what made that relationship so successful. I mean, I cannot even once remember a situation where we would actually fight or anything. And I think among co-founders with that kind of history, that's probably very rare. But I think what made it so successful is that we don't work together every day. Yeah, it's
okay.
If I say there's a certain amount of distance, I don't mean that in a negative way. Still very good friends at the same time, but it's and in some respect, is one of the people I trust more, or would trust with anything, since we have such a long history. But since we also didn't work together every day, 8 hours a day, we didn't have a lot of conflict points as well. So since there was a little bit of that distance as well, as part of, I think, why we Never got into fights or anything.
That's a very fair point. I think I'm I'm the type of person that gets super excited quite often and needs to share all the time. And I think that's one of the things that I learned with Nikki in the early days. Because in the early days, we'd be in the same room, in the same office, working next to each other until Nikki said, "No more, get out of here, go in a different room. I need to do some real work." So yeah, some distance is always good and healthy for sure. 27 years, 27 years of resolution. I have a couple of questions around that. This length. One first, what are some of the biggest? I'm happy with one. If you just want to tell me one of the biggest takeaway of running a business. You've been pivoting. You've been getting into other bits. You've gone with the currents and had done a full time. But resolution has been your baby for like 27 years. What's one of the biggest takeaways of being a founder?
Oh, there's so many. One thing is, it's been my choice. I mean, I could have sold resolution in the meantime and those things. So, but I like what we do, so it's my choice to be in that business. But if you have a business that you want to be there for a very long time, like you say, you actually know what makes you money today is not going to make you money in 10 years. Yeah, or very likely not. So you really need to dedicate part. If your goal is, I want to build this product and then I want to sell the company, then you can holistically focus on that single product and just do that, and then it either works or doesn't work. Yeah, or you pivot and learn something, and but you're very, very focused. If you and when I started the resolution business and we do projects, we were also just focused on that. But if you want to run a company over a long time, it's more of a lifestyle business, then at some point you need to get into a rhythm where you know some of the product that's making most of your money now, you need to find 1 or 2 or 5 other products that are going to be doing that in 5 years' time or 6 years' time, depending on the cycles here. So you will be doing different things in different stages of it. So paying the bills now, investing in this, or trying these 10 things out to see what sticks, and if we find another winner or 2 or 3 things that will pay the bills tomorrow and fund the team. So you need to get a bit more into that rhythm, that you're always looking at that you don't dedicate 100% of your time just to that one product, but that you spend a little bit of things, what is the medium and the long term, and think about that as well. I think that's one learning. The other thing is that almost always there's an up and down and cycles. So there's times where the moment resolution is going incredibly well, it's fantastic, but there will probably be a time 3, 5, 10 years from now where we have challenges, where we might even lay off people again or let some people move on and that stuff. It's not guaranteed that that you're always on top and always successful in those things. You will have sometimes times where it's not, and often it's not even your fault. It's some macroeconomic things. In resolution, we had a time where for a couple of months we need to lay off all the engineers that we had when there was a .com crash, where most of your customers would within 2 or 3 days would cancel your contract or say, well, you can come back, but only at 20% of the rate that you're now, and so on. I mean, there was also the 2008 financial crisis, which didn't hit us very hard, but there are things in the world, be it pandemic, be it things. In that instance with the pandemic, we were in a lucky situation that, if anything, it increased the business that we had because of remote work and the Jira Atlassian tools, which are helping on the remote work side. But there will things that hit your business. Some are homemade, some are just coming from the outside. So it's not all honky-dory. It's fantastic growth and that stuff all the time. So so you will have cycles where you're on top of your game. You'll have cycles where you're down, and you need to deal with all of that.
And after 27 years, what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated to carry on with this business?
Well, what keeps me motivated is on the one side, the team, and on the other side, that it doesn't feel like 27 years, since we don't do the same thing. If I would have a coffee shop and would do exactly the same thing, I would probably be bored of my. I'm not good with doing the same thing forever. But since today we're looking at AI and those things, so today it's old news by the time the episode comes out. So the plug is not very helpful. But today we launched our
singularity by the time the episode is
maybe. We launched our Jira GPT today, and that's something you couldn't even envisage a year ago. That wasn't what's possible with that thing wasn't even on the cards a year ago. So that's why it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like I've been doing the same thing for 27 years. The name resolution might be the same, but what we do today is very different to what we did in the beginning, and I learned tons along the way. And I think that is the key thing. What would also tell me to stop at some point if I don't feel like there's stuff to be curious about and things I can learn and things I can waste many hours in just trying out, and because I'm just interested in them.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Hopefully not.
You're way too curious and excited. You have all the gadgets. You buy, and I think Bjorn is kind of like on the same frequency. You guys kind of entertain each other in a sense. In that sense, like Bjorn comes in and says, "Oh, I found this cool thing. I bought it. Oh yeah, I found this cool thing. Come in here. Let me show you what I've been coding."
and that's a great thing working with Bjorn, who's my co-CEO. He joined Resolution, what is it now, 7 years ago or something like that. That's the nice thing about working with Bjorn. There's a lot of overlap in curiosity and interest that we have, but vastly different skill sets. So as a team, I think we really complement each other very well in terms of stuff he's great in, which I'm not, and other things where I'm better in.
Yeah.
And again, if we also look at what someone who listens might take away, I think the important thing is if you build teams, look at the point, how can teams complement? I've never been, even in personal development, there's tons of things I'm really shit at. And my team will tell you some of them.
I'll ask Bjorn in a second.
Yes, you can. Or even you know some of them. No, but it's I've never been a big fan of investing a lot of time and effort in the things you're bad at to be better at. Yeah. If something is really standing in your way and stopping you from achieving your dream, then work on it, get better on it. Yeah. But a lot of other things, if you work on your weaknesses, the only thing you'll achieve is it's hard work. You get probably better, but you probably only get mediocre at it. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
But if you spend time on the stuff you're strong in, the stuff that's usually the things you're curious about.
Yeah.
You can really get great at it. Yeah. And I think that's much better. Spend the time you have on things to be great at 2 or 3 things, and then if you have to build a team, try to find the people who complement each other. That whatever, this guy is great, Bjorn is awesome at sales and relationships and that stuff, and believe it or not, I feel much more like an introvert. So, or if you want to put someone in front of a stage of 1,000 people, you pick Björn, you don't pick me. Yeah. If you have a room of 7 engineers, who you want to convince or get enthusiastic about something or something, you pick me. That's the whole thing in terms of know your weaknesses and strengths, or of the team or the people that surround you, and try to put the ones together that you have a very strong team, but individual, whatever. Björn can make up for my weakness presenting in front of 1,000 people. Yeah, very easily. Yeah, or he's a better marketing guy than I ever will be. And so if you then put your teams together, and that's the whole philosophy in our engineering and those things as well, is not have 5 times the same engineer. No, have different people that are strong in other things and can help each other achieve some awesome things.
So invest in your strengths, not your weaknesses.
If you look at from a personal development thing, yes, absolutely. Be stronger in your strength and really only address your weaknesses if they really stand in your way. And the other thing is, I think I'm pretty open and would recommend everyone that be also open about your weaknesses. Yeah, if you tell your team or the people working with you or so, hey, this is what I'm good at, but also here are the things you see me struggle with, or I'm, for example, bad about giving good feedback. Yeah. Because
I'm only going to tell you what's wrong with this, not what's good about it.
Now, yeah, to a degree, because my brain works a little bit in the way, if something is solved especially solved in theory, I move on to the next thing. Yeah, I'm not great at executing all the details then and make it nooks and crannies and do those 10,000 things. But it also means that if we brainstorm with part of the team and or we should do this and this, that might be my strength. But then someone goes and does all those things, I have already moved on and I'm on the next thing. So instead I should say, hey, oh, very well, great solution, fantastic, and those and things. And I really appreciate that that's happening, but I'm just not good at telling that I force myself to do that more often, or because I know it's one of my weaknesses. And but I'm never going to be great at it. Yeah, and everyone I hire, I tell them that pretty much up front. Hey, if you work with me, that's the thing you should know about me. This is the stuff I'm really good at, and you can count on. But you should also be able to deal with the things I'm not so great at, or the things I don't tolerate. And then they can also have a chance to make a decision. Is that actually someone I want to work with?
Yeah, we chose violence, Nikki and I. You're also an investor, aside from being an entrepreneur, founder. What motivates you to invest in people and companies?
Well, a little bit. That's a complex question. When I told you that I really enjoy working with small teams, yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you take the flip side from that, is also that I don't have the appetite to grow resolution into 100 people, 200 people, 500 people business. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that means I need to be very selective in what we do and what we don't do. Because even if I would have, and I don't at the moment, but if I would have 20 more app ideas, which are great and that stuff, need to hire 30 more people, it would go to a size that I don't really want it to have. Yeah. So that means we can't work on everything ourselves. Yeah. At the same time, I love to see passion in people, yeah, and people like you, like Nikki, or some of the others who have a great product idea, but are very passionate about solving a problem and that stuff. Being able to help with some money and other things to get them started and see them successful also gives me thrive. So it's very rarely actually about the money. The money comes as a consequence of that, and we've done well. So there's no secret about it. But I rarely do an investment because I think, oh, this is going to 10x my money, and it's fantastic. And I don't even care too much if I get my investment back or if it's 10x or 5x on the stuff. I'm happy once it does, but it's not the thing that drives my decision. It's much more looking at the team that is looking for funding. Can I believe in those people? Do I like those people? I would never make an investment with someone I don't like or don't believe in just to make money. Yeah. And then I see it much more as investing into those people. Yet I might have a great product or great product idea. But if I invest much more into them than into the product, because I feel like even if they figure out the product is not working or it's not the best idea or they need to pivot, I have the trust in them that they will do all of that because they are passionate about it and smart people. And then seeing them build other small teams that are doing great stuff. It's not the same as running my own team, but it's still something that has me passionate about it, and I can get a lot of positivity out of that. Money, yes, but that's not the deciding factor. I mean, I'm also not, it sounds like money, I don't care about money. I'm not doing this for charity. We invest a lot in, or we give a lot to charity, but that's, we're about making money. So that's not the thing. But money very rarely is my primary objective or primary consideration when looking at it. Certainly, the business case needs to be sound and all of those things. But the people behind it or the small team behind it, I care about much, much more.
I was expecting that answer.
You know me, so it's not exactly. Shouldn't be a surprise to you.
And we were talking the other day whether about an idea and whether you'd invest in that idea, and your answer was like, don't necessarily like the idea, but I would definitely invest in you, right? Which kind of like in very short sentence summarizes what you just said, which you said it beautifully, but that's what it is, right? You invest in people and the potential of people, and sure, you have to have an idea to come with along the way, but and I've noticed this as well, investing in a couple of companies, is that's what I'm interested in, the character, the potential, the way that founder carried themselves speaks volumes to whether, and not even if they're gonna make it or not, but whether they're gonna be able to take the hard decisions and be able to be flexible and pivot in ways that they make things happen. And some people have an eye on spotting those, and it does seem like you do. The large portion of the businesses that you invest are doing quite well or have returned the investment and then some. But yeah, I think that's for me, that's important. But not everyone cares about that. Like, I know a lot of investors that look at that's the growth that's projected over the next period and so on, and not necessarily looking at the profile of the
and there's nothing, I don't even feel that's a bad thing to do. It's not what I'm doing. Ultimately, I try to do a lot of things that make me happy. Yeah, it's well, none of the money I'm going to make I can take with me once I die. Yeah, my children are secure in terms of money-wise. So if I make 10% more, 20% more, it's not going to make a difference to my lifestyle, to what I do at the moment. Those things. That might sound arrogant, but it's part of the reality. So for me, the important thing is that I can do things I'm passionate about, I'm great at, and that bring me joy. And just having a bigger bank account doesn't bring me joy. As simple as that, and as stupid as that. Working with you, working with some of the other guys, that thrills me. Yeah, seeing that they do well and those things, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Or the products they create, the users they find, I mean, I always, believe it or not, I get a thrill out if I look at our customer list and you see whatever, NASA, Google, and some I can't mention, but the who's who of the internet companies are using our plugins.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get an incredible thrill or proudness or however you want to call it out of that, more than the monetary amount they spend with us, that they see enough value in the product that the team creates to use it to pay us, where hundreds of salespeople try to reach out to those companies and sell them something and we get nothing.
Yeah.
They come to us, to the marketplace, buy our products because they see the value in it and the problem it solves. And I'm really, really proud of that, and seeing that other people do the same, or the customers you had, and even to the point of that there was interest for AppFire to acquire you and saw enough value in the business to do that. That are the things that really get me excited and get me out of bed, and what I really enjoy. And maybe to add one more thing to the investment, the other thing that I always look at, and we had that discussion, is that we can add some value beyond money. So
yeah.
I typically don't do anything where money is the only thing that's needed, because that's the thing. I want to add more. There are better ways. There are other investors who just look at your business case, give you money and that stuff, and might give it at a better valuation than we would do. It's we always also look at, can we help that team to be faster than they would be just by themselves and just with money?
That's a really good answer. And with the clients things, I also agree the amount of times that I would feel so proud when I see a new name, or when I see customers just bragging about our products. So that's the profit. That's the profit that you get, right? The profit is not just dollar signs, and very often when that becomes the main motivator, you're in it for the wrong reasons, and you can see the profits should be all of the things that you
or the
mentioned.
fun in knowing that I get a lot of gadgets, but most of the company I get those gadgets from, they spend more money with us than I spent on their gadgets.
Yeah, true, very true. Christian, I usually end with 3 questions, flash questions. So we're gonna get into that now. What is a quote that you live by?
Well, I'm not sure if it's an official quote, but it's a motto nevertheless. And it's, if I make more good decisions on a day than bad decisions, it's been a good day.
The sum up is positive, basically.
Yeah. And I think part of that is no one should strive to only do great decisions. I mean, you try to do the best decision with the information you have, but you should also know that you're doing a hell lot of bad decisions. And on any day where I had more good decisions than bad decisions, that's been a good day. And also sometimes making a decision is better than not making a decision. Or even if it's a bad decision, you can at least learn from it and change it. So making a decision is better than just putting it off, or not making a decision. Because inadvertently, even not making a decision is a decision in itself, but it's not usually it's the wrong one.
True. A book that impacted or changed your life, be it personal or professional career-wise?
I actually can't think of one. I read a lot of books, I listened to a lot of audiobooks, but there's none that I would say hugely impacted or changed my life. Maybe I divert that to a movie.
Okay, yeah.
Dead Poetry's Club with Robin Williams. And I mean, maybe many of you are too young to have seen it. But the upshot ultimate, it's even nowadays a movie worth watching. And I actually like Robin Williams, and even I think it is a story in itself, that a guy that was so funny and so So truthful in a lot of his movies, ended up doing suicide, being
Yeah.
personally very unhappy. But nevertheless, that Poetry Club is the key takeaway there is the carpe diem, use your day. And I think that is something I feel I do a lot of days and would love to do more. So I think that is a very good takeaway and has changed my life really at a young age. So I wouldn't have say it's even hard for me to talk about. I wouldn't have traveled that much with my parents and so on if I wouldn't have had that motto.
When was the movie? When did the movie come out?
Oh, I can't tell you. I was probably
When did you
18,
watch
19, 20. So it's an old movie.
it? And
By today's standard.
when did you see it the first time?
Yeah, must be around that age. And sort of, and maybe why that movie resonated so much with me is that my dad died when I was 11.
Okay.
So I'm not taking for granted that you have time. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
And essentially using the day that you have.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't want to get you there.
No, it gets me emotional because I lost both of my grandparents this last year in 2022, and it's you think of that's very true. Taking advantage. I haven't really taken advantage of them when they were alive, and I can maybe not as at the level that that you're feeling it, but I can definitely resonate with that.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't much I could do with my dad at that age, but like I said, I wanted to see the world, and I took my mother and my stepdad along on a lot of those travels, or they came and visited me, and that was really sort of because of that movie.
I'm surprised that I haven't seen the movie. I need to now I really need to watch the movie. Well, to put it on a more positive note, the last question is about a positive habit that you advocate for usually. Except for telling Bjorn all the time to stop smoking.
Oh, positive habit. Again, there are so many. I think the advice there would be find something that gives you balance and grounding. For me, what helps me a lot is to do running. I mean, obviously it's healthy, and usually also helps me with my weight management. And you can now see that I was injured and wasn't able to run for 6 months. And that means I struggle a lot more mentally wise than other time. Also, if you're the type of person who likes that, is mindfulness, sort of meditation, or just being more mindful. So I reduced a lot of the time I spent on my mobile phone and those kind of things. Be more present with my kids, play with them, and not just play with them and then look at your mobile all the time, read Facebook and those kind of things. Really be there with them in a minute. So
Being present.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I was even when I started Misfit Founders, you're in my mind as someone that I really wanted to kind of like share their story on camera in a sense. And also thank you for opening up and talking about some of the challenges as well as what motivates you to do what you do. And I'm definitely gonna have you on for episode 100, okay?
which hopefully more of a party then.
A party. Yeah. Definitely, that's gonna be a good episode. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.